It has at times felt like a bit of a boys' club.
The funding has been quite a challenge.
I was still running my business from my hospital bed.
The more I speak up, is that going to be damaging to my business?
It's just something that I feel like everyone should be really aware of because it affects all of us.
Would anyone like coffee?
Oh, coffee, yeah, that would be lovely.
Coffee lady. What have I done? You're going to be really awkward and want tea. 81% have experienced sexism, gender bias and unequal access to opportunities whilst running their business. I was in this meeting and it was with 8 men, including my client and me. So I stood up to start chairing this meeting and one gentleman sort of stopped me and said, "Hey, like, sit down. I thought you were just doing the minutes."
My situation's slightly different, whereas I was the last person the last 2 to get a job, and pretty much they didn't give me the job because I was a woman. So it knocks your confidence.
Did they actually openly give you that
Yes.
feedback then?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I haven't had any sexism directly, but I have had a situation recently, and we had a retailing event where they had all the CEOs and founders of brands that have just gone into this company, and every single CEO was a man except for me. And honestly, I remember going to the toilet in the intermission and like calling my friend and being like, "I'm literally the only woman here." And people weren't really that interested in what I was doing, and I did feel like it was because it was like the boys' club and I was just an intruder.
What about yourself, if you had a situation?
Yeah, more than one, but I think the most sort of relevant one was visiting trade shows. I thought it'd be nice to take my friend, John, he was the one who was spoken to by every single person there, with the exception of one lovely woman who addressed me first, which was just such a nice experience.
Yeah, it does make a difference.
What had happened. Even when John corrected them that I was the business owner, he was literally just there for moral support. They still just gave him eye contact, just spoke to him, and just refused to really acknowledge my presence.
Actually, we do need to speak up more. The more people that speak up, then more is going to get done about it. I think we do tend to kind of think, actually, the more I speak up, is that going to be damaging to my business?
I think when it comes to starting a business as a woman, I think just get some other amazing women around you.
One of the things I found is you can't be in a business on your own. You do have to reach out and ask for help.
It's almost like overcompensating because you're like, I'm a CEO, I'm a founder, I should be an independent woman. Yeah. And then you find, actually, no, I still can't lift up that really heavy box over there. Let me call someone in. So I think it's about finding that balance and knowing you can be an independent, female founder, but also ask for help when you need it. Is there enough support for the self-employed during pregnancy? Well, this is something I think about all the time. I'm not a mother yet. It's something I definitely want in my near future. And I worry about it all the time. I just think, how am I going to be able to run my business in the same way and be pregnant? It really scares me. I think it's probably one of the key reasons why I haven't really started trying.
I was really poorly with my second pregnancy and was in hospital literally the whole pregnancy. But I was still running my business like fully from my hospital bed, like every day. Had one of the managers ring me and I'd literally given birth about 20 minutes before. And, I was saying, "Oh yeah, you've got to do this and speak to this client." And she was like, "Where are you? I can hear are you still in hospital?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I had him like 20 minutes ago." And, I look back and think, how did I do that? But at the time I didn't know there were any options of support or I couldn't find them anyway. So, yeah.
I don't think that there are any, realistically. It's not one size fits all. There are people who are sick the whole way through pregnancy. There are people who work until the moment they're about to give birth. And so the package should reflect that. It should be fair to people no matter what they experience because it's outside of their control.
There's a huge gap, isn't there, around that?
I totally agree. It seems to be a lot of the focus is on the after, but there doesn't seem to be any focus on female founders or female CEOs whilst the pregnancy is going on.
I think for me, certainly speaking with my best friend who was pregnant, she had a tough pregnancy. She was self-employed. There was no sick pay, nothing, because she's self-employed. So she then struggled through it, which then put undue strain on herself and her unborn baby, which I think is just such a shame that there isn't that support there like there would be if you were in full-time employment. Even just kind of the government allowance, it would be wonderful if something similar was brought in. %39% say that childcare or family responsibilities is their biggest challenge.
I thought it'd be higher, to be honest with you, because you, as the woman, you're the one the school calls first. I could be on a conference call, with 100 people from around the world, and it's been planned that it has to be a certain time because of all the different time zones, etc. And then, the school will be ringing me non-stop. When I sort of nip out to be able to take the call, it's like, oh, well, I haven't tried your husband.
From a childcare perspective, I'm a single mum. And actually, even though I've got parents, they're elderly. So it's either, it's not so much now because she's older, but when she was younger, it was pretty much pointless for me going to work because of the cost of putting her into childcare. And it meant that actually I had to work probably 80 hours a week just to cover the costs.
The advice I would give is actually get a network of people who are in the same situation. Like my friend group, mum friends as I call them, we have a system whereby we share childcare in the summer holidays and stuff like that. We'll do little favours, or if a couple of us have to work, then the others will take them, etc.
Yeah, and I would relate to that in the fact that 3 of the networking groups that I'm part of, they are all women in business, or mums in business, or ladies in business. And that is the support that's there. So it's definitely worth looking at what's around the local area, because there is support out there in that respect. There needs to be greater awareness of the impact of perimenopause and menopause, and more support for those experiencing it. I know this one for me is quite a biggie. So I was kind of in denial really around menopause because I actually hadn't even heard of perimenopause, and I was kind of experiencing like a foggy mind and just energy. And from a business impact, it was quite difficult because I was experiencing more headaches, I was more tired, my energy was just really impacted. Postpone courses, postpone calls, just purely because you're just not in the right frame of mind. It does kind of impact you. And I think if we were prepared better, we would, be able to kind of deal with it. And, back to the point around, you hear of the big word menopause, but the lead up to it is actually probably just as damaging, and quite hard to deal with. I almost felt that I couldn't really ask anyone either. It was like this taboo subject. I was kind of just suffering alone and trying to pop some vitamins, which obviously didn't help whatsoever. I've tried to educate myself a bit more over the last few years, but women can go into perimenopause from 35, and some have even before that, and it can go on then for lengths of 10 to 20 to 30 years. And I think so there's a huge education gap. And understanding how that could potentially impact on a woman in business later in life.
I completely agree. I think the lack of education is shocking. Previous generations haven't passed on that knowledge, they haven't passed on that information, which is, I think, just a sign of the times. It is still taboo to talk about it. We're becoming more open about talking about periods and other things that have previously been sort of kind of brushed under the carpet.
I was going to say, I feel almost embarrassed that I know nothing about this topic, and I think it's something that definitely needs to be taught in schools, in universities, wherever you can educate someone about it. I think it needs to happen because, I was talking to my boyfriend about it the other day, and I was like, "Do you know anything about menopause?" And he was like, "No." And I was like, "I don't know anything about it." And it's crazy because as a woman, the fact that I don't know anything about it, and then of course, how do we expect men to know anything about it when we don't even know ourselves? And then where's the support for employers or, you know, business partners? You could have a business partner that's male, you're going through menopause. And it's just something that I feel like everyone should be really aware of because it affects all of us.
Yeah, so one of the things that is great is in the doctor's surgeries now, there is a female doctor who is allocated, who runs webinars to teach through the whole process, but it gives you a good insight into what to expect and kind of what some of the solutions that are out there, whether that might be HRT or if you want to go down like the natural route, plant medicines and all that kind of thing. And I think also, you know, there are support groups out there to help women through the menopause.
We almost need a welcome pack as a woman with all the things we will experience that are different.
How to guide. Yeah, how to guide.
All the things to look forward to. Yes.
45% of women cited lack of funding as their biggest challenge and are calling for more training, networking and mentoring opportunities.
I think that's so important. It has at times felt like a bit of a boys' club with funding. I experienced something a few years ago when I was looking to grow the business. I reached out to a few people for some funding, and one gentleman referenced my business as a pet project, which felt quite galling when I sat there in a warehouse that I'd leased for several years after already running my business successfully for several years full time.
I think it was on a programme recently that actually there has been times where people have said, actually, is that a hobby rather than an actual business, even though you've got valid proof that actually it's successful.
Frustrating thing is that it's a presumption over actually looking at the business plan. And I think by having mentors and people in your industry that have actually gone through that really is helpful.
I mean, it's really rewarding running your own business, but the amount of like balls you have to juggle and the amount of things you kind of constantly focused on, actually to have somebody that's gonna kind of, you know, just be a different voice, you know, and a bit of a sounding board as well, you know, would be great as well. I think anything that's kind of focused predominantly on allowing women to be, you know, seen, heard and valued in the workplace or out as a small business owner, and actually looking for those sort of opportunities of growth.
Okay, so the advice that I would give would be to kind of use you being a minority as your fire, or as your fuel, I should say, because I can say to my customer, to my target base, you know, I've experienced this myself. I'm my customer, you know. I know what products are going to work for you. And I've had such amazing feedback from people. And I think that you can, you know, you can really make your mark. And there are a lot of brands out there, but they're not necessarily catered to women by women. Yeah, I've been seeing more kind of like retailer calls for female-owned businesses and female-led businesses, and that just gives me so much hope for the future, because I feel like people aren't just trying to fill a niche within the store. They actually want the founders to be more women founders and things like that. So they're actually caring a lot more about what's happening behind the scenes. And that just gives me a lot of hope for the future.